Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, Fantasaster. This is Battlefield 1. In today's video, we're going to be talking about skill cannons for the infantry class. Specifically, we're going to be talking about what constitutes a skill cannon, what key attributes are required of a weapon to meet that criteria, and what skill cannons are available and what their ideal engagement distances are. We're not going to necessarily be doing a detailed guide on each individual weapon available. Instead, talk more generally about the plethora of available skill cannons and where you should be using them, giving you guys, of course, a full overview of essentially the best weapons available in Battlefield 1. That being said, then, the first thing that any video that covers skill cannon really needs is a clear definition of the term skill cannon, and not in a dictionary fashion, instead a more practical fashion. And in my opinion, there is thus 3 key attributes that a weapon must possess to be a skill cannon, at least in my opinion. One of them is that it has some form of strongly advantageous quality to it. This pretty much exclusively means that it comes with a very high on target, so practical, realistic time to kill at least a set given distance. In other words, it's more or less the hardest hitting gun at a set distance. The second key attribute a weapon must possess in order to be classified as a skill cannon is the skill aspect, obviously, and this comes in one or multiple different forms, generally, however, in a high level of accuracy, so a requirement for good accuracy, a requirement for good mag management, and very frequently as well, in order to take advantage of its very high damage or its strongly advantageous TTK at a certain distance, good positioning skills. Now, many of the weapons in today's video will actually tick all 3 of those boxes for the skill attribute that they must possess. Some, maybe just 1 or 2. In the end, however, in one fashion or another, the weapon must involve skill if it wishes to be a skill cannon. The last attribute that a weapon must possess is attainable and reliable performance. Now, I add this here because essentially, if we would take just the first 2 attributes for a weapon, then something like a bolt-action rifle could be the ultimate skill cannon for close-quarter combat. The reason for this is, of course, that a bolt-action rifle, upon headshot at any engagement distance, will down your target. In reality, though, it's going to be very difficult to actually one-shot headshot kill targets with a bolt-action rifle in close quarters reliably. That's not a viable way to take on enemies. It's more often than not going to get you killed. A shotgun would be the much better choice for that engagement distance. Thus, to complete the skill cannon criteria, a weapon must be strongly advantageous, it must involve some form of skill when using it, usually beyond the average amount needed for your everyday weapon in Battlefield 1. And lastly, this excellent performance of this weapon, while can be difficult to achieve, must be attainable to achieve and must be reliable in the field. Before we then get into the 7 weapons that manage to, in my opinion, establish themselves under this criteria as skill cannon and where their ideal engagement distances necessarily are, let's talk very briefly about 3 weapons that didn't quite make the cut. The first of those is the Short Shot LMG from the They Shall Not Pass DLC. Great close quarter damage, however limited to 12 meters, and sadly beat out by basically all of the shotguns as well as the Automatico and even a now newer LMG from the In the Name of the Tsar DLC, the Parabellum, meaning that this weapon sadly doesn't fulfill the first attribute required of a skill cannon, and that it is strongly advantageous in the damage department. The second weapon that didn't quite make it, and this weapon not many of you will necessarily be too familiar with, is the Vitali, one of 2 new scout weapons available from the In the Name of the Tsar DLC. This weapon comes with an extremely low fire rate, but a very interesting sweet spot damage model, that's a one-shot kill, between 20 and 50 meters. This weapon clearly possesses the strongly advantageous TTK, the strongly advantageous attribute of being able to take out a target in one shot, and that at a very interesting distance where judging that distance is very much realistic. It obviously also requires quite a bit of skill, both in the positioning and the accuracy department. Where this weapon fails, sadly, however, is attainable and reliable performance. And this comes down to the fact that this sweet spot damage model, unlike other sweet spot damage models of weapons we will be talking about in just a minute, is capped at 100 damage. Meaning, when you're shooting at a target running perpendicular to you, that bullet will first go in their arm and then in their chest, meaning you won't get your full 100 damage because, of course, of the arm multiplier to damage. It also means that all shots going into legs and arms are not going to be a one-shot kill. And at these distances, at such, for scout weaponry, really close quarter scenarios, you can't afford to miss, or even worse, to not fully down your target when shooting them, because then they become aware of your position. They can then either take you out or at bare minimum spot you for the enemy team to then rush in and kill you, thus making this weapon unbelievably unreliable to actually use at its ideal engagement distance. It's the reason why I didn't actually do a weapon review on this weapon, because I simply found it too frustrating personally to use. The last weapon of the three that didn't quite make it is obviously going to be the General Liu. Now this weapon fails to complete the first attribute required of a skill cannon weapon, and that is the strongly advantageous attribute, the excellent time to kill, and that's because it's basically beat out by other skill cannons at what it does. In close medium range, there's weapons like the auto-loading 835 or even some of the normal LMGs which will outdamage this weapon, meaning that this weapon has to go to the more medium long range where A, its recoil starts to become a problem to its performance, and B, there is of course the Selbstlade 1906, which is in those scenarios clearly the better choice. The only argument for this weapon really is that it has one shot more. Now realistically what this means is that this weapon is great for people trying to learn to be accurate with SLRs, trying to learn to get to the point where they can reliably use 5-shot SLRs such as the autoloading 835 and the Selbstlade 1906, but in a strictly competitive, strictly what is the best weapon at what engagement distance sense, sadly this weapon is very much beat out by the Selbstlade 1906. Leaving what makes a skill cannon and the weapons that didn't quite make the cut then to one side, let's talk about the 7 weapons that did. And now these are in order of close quarters, starting with actually a secondary weapon. And this is more of a controversial choice, and I gave this weapon a little bit more leeway in the kind of strictly applying the criteria sense, because it is a secondary weapon and because of the way you'd use a secondary weapon over a primary weapon. But it is, of course, the Obrez pistol, coming in with a one-shot body shot kill, 100 damage between 0 and 10 meters, paired of course with only 5 shots available and a abysmal 38 round per minute fire rate, meaning either you make that shot or you don't, very much like you would with a deagle from Battlefield 4, assuming you were going for headshots on a deagle. This weapon is strictly seen even more reliant on accuracy, because really, once your target is a little bit damaged, you have one shot to take out that target, and unless they're an oblivious enemy, you're a dead man before you can fire your second. Thus, this weapon is very much a difficult weapon to use, and you could argue that this weapon doesn't meet the attainable reliable performance criteria, much like the Vatelli Vitali did, because if you hit somebody in the arm, you're not getting full damage either. However, because this is a secondary, I gave it a little bit more leeway, and because this weapon is essentially to be used often as backup solution, will mean that you're shooting at targets that may at least be slightly damaged, meaning that getting 90 damage is perfectly sufficient to take out your target. Moving on from the Obrez, which is a secondary pistol, to a primary weapon. The primary skill cannon, in my opinion, for the assault class in Battlefield 1, and that is undoubtedly, of course, the Model 1900 Factory. Coming in with a one-shot kill between 0 and 16 meters, this shotgun fires at a blazing fast 299 rounds per minute with a 20 pellet per shot output, and only, because of its dual-barreled nature, of course, 2 shots available to it. This gun, strictly seen, if you are accurate with it, is absolutely amazing in one-on-ones, even once you get really accurate, and some of today's footage is a slight demonstration of such in 2-on-1s, where you can start really hammering every shot into your enemy. It requires a little bit of skill. Just running in and spamming downrange shot is not going to work with this shotgun, because you don't have the necessarily backup ammunition to just keep spamming downrange. For those kind of playstyles, other shotguns are better. For those who can be accurate and those who can play that active instead of reactive playstyle that I always go on about, this shotgun clearly is the ultimate close quarter skill cannon. The third weapon that we need to talk about in today's video is, of course, the autoloading 835, with an ideal engagement distance between 0 and 47 meters, although you could argue between 0 and 20 meters, or strictly in this comparison, 0 to 16 meters. There's very much weapons out there that are better at that engagement distance, weapons such as shotguns, weapons such as the Automatico. However, its 3-shot kill and thus a damage output comparable to the Hellriegel is between 0 and 47 meters, requiring you to hit 3 out of your 5 available bullets with a 60% accuracy requirement and a blazing fast fire rate of 359 rounds per minute. This weapon is the poster child of what makes a skill cannon. Can be very tricky to use and sometimes frustrating to use, but when you get it right, clearly is one of, if not the best weapon in the entire game. Arguably, however, it's got a direct competitor, and a number of you made me aware of this in my weapon on skill cannons for the medic class in Battlefield 1, and that is the RSC 1917, coming in with the exact same ideal engagement distance, 0 to 47 meters, however a 2-hit kill paired with an extremely slow rate of fire of 163 rounds per minute, and of course 6 available rounds instead of just 5. This weapon has a TTK just slightly longer than that of the autoloading 835, however is realistically definitely capable of taking out 2 targets at a time. And if you're really bad and you miss a bunch of shots, assuming you're not dead because you're in too much of a close quarter scenario, you've got plenty of shots to go through if you want to take out 1 target. In some sense, you could argue that this weapon is very much a great weapon to learn to get good at using the autoloading 835 and later weapons that we're going to be talking about. On another hand, and I've played this weapon quite extensively over the last few days, this weapon is also just a fantastic choice for those who want to focus on accuracy, who want a weapon that can put out amazing amounts of damage, but don't want to limit themselves to having to ensure that they really only go up against 1 target at a time. It offers slightly reduced damage, slightly worse time to kills, however, in exchange, offers you the ability to take on 2 targets at once, which most definitely is an advantage in one fashion or another. Moving on from the RSC 1917 and the autoloading 835, weapons that share the exact same engagement distance, we move to another shotgun actually. Once more the Model 1900, in this case however the slug variant, and this is going to be a little bit controversial, but hear me out if you can. This shotgun comes in with a 1-shot kill between 0 and 11 meters, of course being clearly beat out by the factory version of this shotgun for its close quarter potential, however nevertheless being a very solid close quarter killing machine. Further to that, it is a 2-shot kill all the way out to 55 meters, meaning theoretically, given its 299 rounds per minute, this weapon outside of the shotgun's 1-shot range is the fastest killing weapon in Battlefield 1 period, at least for the infantry class of weaponries, and of course leaving headshot sniper rifles and sweet spot sniper rifle kills to one side. This weapon has an amazing actual damage output. However, I would make an argument here that realistically, the amount of damage that you can expect from this weapon, because you cannot fire this weapon accurately at, let's say, medium range, 30 meters or so, at its maximum fire rate, you're going to definitely miss your shot, is comparable to that of the RSC 1917 or autoloading 835, and how much damage it's going to put out at medium range. This, however, comes with the advantage of being a 1-shot kill in close quarters. The disadvantage is, of course, that at medium range, if you want to take down your target, unless you hit a headshot, which is always going to be a 1-shot kill up until 55 meters, you're actually going to have to attain a very difficult 100% accuracy level. So some would argue that this weapon may or may not meet the attainable, reliable performance attribute required of a skill cannon. Let me know down below in the comments what you think. I, in my opinion, think that this weapon definitely meets the mark. After that then comes the very obvious Martini Henry, the skill cannon for the scout class of weaponry, coming in with a 1-shot kill, 100 damage or more, between 30 and 80 meters, one of the largest, if not the largest actually, sweet spot damage model available to scout weaponry in Battlefield 1, a total of 50 meters, where this extremely slow firing weapon with a fire rate of only 25 rounds per minute will be able to actually down your target. Only 1 shot available before you have to reload. However, between 30 and 80 meters, this weapon will 1-shot kill your targets. Now, some of you will remember what I said about the Vitelli Vitali. Why does the same metric not apply to this gun? Well, actually, first of all, because the engagement distance is slightly further out, meaning that you're not necessarily going to get killed if you hit them in the arm. But secondly, because this weapon essentially has two sweet spot damage models. Between 42 meters and 68 meters, a much narrower 26 meter sweet spot, this weapon does so much damage that even if you hit somebody in the arm, they're still gonna die at 100% health, giving you a sweet spot damage model where you can be 100% sure if you hit your shot at that distance, that target, as normal infantry player at least, is going to die. Last on the list then is of course the Selbstlader 1906 in either factory or sniper variant depending on what you prefer. This weapon's ideal engagement distance, especially in light of the other weapons that we've already discussed, is beyond 47 meters. So 48 meters and further. However, I'd argue that from about 100, maybe 120 meters, SLRs very much just become inferior to bolt action rifles, which are then the better choice overall. This weapon comes with an all-range 3-shot kill paired with 299 round per minute fire rate, low recoil, an amazing 800 meters per second muzzle velocity. However, of course, as the auto-loading 835 does, a very low magazine size at only 5. If you hit your shots, you position yourself well with this weapon, there's basically almost nothing that can stop you. And that pretty much wraps up the skill cannon class of weaponry in my opinion. Here are the weapons with all their ideal engagement distances. This is where, in my opinion, they perform best. If you are of the opinion I forgot any of the key skill cannons or failed to mention something very important in light of this video, leave that as well as, of course, your usual video suggestions down below in the comments or hit me up with them on Twitter. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. But with all that being said, I'd like to thank you very much for watching and hope to see you in the next Battlefield 1 video.